Today we'll be discussing a population of wild dolphins in the Atlantic Ocean. Dolphins are a diploid organism that happen to reproduce through mating. We'll be discussing a dolphin's temperament, being either friendly or aggressive. The temperament in this case will be an autosomal gene with 2 alleles, 3 genotypes, and 3 phenotypes. The genotypes will be big B, which is friendly, big B, little b, which will exhibit both friendly and aggressive temperaments, and little b, which will be aggressive. So now let's dive into our dolphin population. Before selection occurs, we have a population of 64 dolphins. Big B is 34, big B, little b is 25, and little b is 5, for a grand total of 64. Next up, we'll discuss the allele frequency. For big B, we would do 34 plus half of 25 divided by 64, due to big B having 34 individuals with a large B, and half of 25 due to big B, little b having 25. This will result in a big B allele frequency of 0.7266. You would then do the same calculations in order to determine the little b allele frequency, which would be 0.2734 right here. We need to ensure that our population of 64 dolphins is in Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium. We will use the Hardy-Weinberg equation in order to determine the expected genotype frequency and the expected number of dolphins per genotype. For the big B expected frequency, we would square the big B allele frequency to get 0.5279. For the big B, little b expected frequency, we would multiply 2 times the big B and little b alleles frequency, which would give us 0.3973. For the little b expected frequency, we would square the little b allele frequency, giving us 0.0747. From there, we would multiply each expected genotype frequency by our total population of 64 in order to get the expected number of individuals, which would be right here. Next, we'll conduct a chi-square test to ensure the population is in equilibrium. As we run through the table and get to the final column, we can see that we end up with a value of 0.01828. From there, we will determine the degrees of freedom, which is 1, giving us a critical value of 3.841. When we compare the two values, we see that the critical value is larger, meaning the population is in Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium. Now, as soon as the selection occurs on our population of dolphins, so sad. We start with the genotype frequencies before selection, which are listed here. Then we multiply them by the relative fitness, which would give us the survivors per genotype. Then we'll add up all the numbers in the survivors row, which will give us the average fitness, which is W bar, which is 0.9438. Then we would divide the survivors by W bar. From that, we'll get the corrected genotype frequencies, which are listed right down here. From the new genotype frequencies, we can determine the allele frequencies. For big B, we would do 0.5593 plus half of 0.3789, which would give us a frequency of 0.7488 for the big B allele. Then we would do 0.0618 plus half of 0.3789, which would give us an allele frequency of 0.2512 for the little b allele. Finally, we do a comparison between the genotype frequencies before and after selection has occurred. The big B genotype increased in frequency while the other two decreased. Due to this, we can conclude that directional selection has occurred on the dolphin population. It would be directional selection means only the big B is favored and increases while the others decreased. If it were to continue in future generations, the big B homozygous genotype would be the only one after an infinite amount of generations. And then these are my references. Thank you.